some interesting build-up happened this week on Hannibal. Although, given how we basically already know how the season is going to end and how these suspicions ultimately, or given how we can basically give a very good guess as to how these suspicions culminate, the build-up here that Hannibal might be discovered was rendered a little. You're still kind of, you don't really get any solid payoff in the form of Hannibal getting arrested. But there is a twist at the end of the episode that harkens back to a brief little plot line in season 1 that I actually had to remind myself of because it's been a while since I've seen season 1. But yeah, they bring back a character from season 1 in this episode. I'm not going to spoil who. It's at the very end of the episode, and it poses a very interesting. There were two very interesting moves by the Chesapeake Ripper this time around. The Chesapeake Ripper being, as we all know, Hannibal Lecter. Now, first of all, Will is now seeing some repercussions of his attempted murder of Hannibal Lecter when he's losing friends. He's already basically lost all of his friends. Alana Bloom has now completely abandoned him. She basically says that she can't forgive him for trying to, albeit indirectly, kill Hannibal Lecter. And Hannibal now, secretly, we find out that he kind of admires Will for his ability to do that. But professionally, and to keep up appearances, Hannibal Lecter also distances himself from Will. Alana hooking up with Hannibal, that was a bold move. And it was pretty, to be fair, they played it awkwardly. Not to say anything against the performances of Carolyn DeVarnas and Mads Mikkelsen, because they played it fine. But I'm just saying that in terms of other characters' reactions to it and how the audience is meant to see it, the audience is meant to go, really? Oh. Because it's not exactly supposed to be a happy. We're not exactly supposed to feel happy because she's hooking up with a serial killer, not with the hero of the show. Although, granted, Will Graham doesn't exactly fit the classic definition of hero, but you get my point. The acting was phenomenal all around this time, although some actors weren't given as much juicy material to work with. Alana was sadly reduced to a very ignorant role this time around, although I don't blame Carolyn DeVarnas for giving a lesser performance because she is still a very talented actress. And like I said, she plays it fine, she plays it well. It's just that there's not as much dramatically for her to work with. Although, to be fair, her finally giving up on Will was meaningful from a narrative perspective and from a character standpoint. Actually, from a lot of different standpoints, now that I think about it, it was very meaningful because this is the person who has essentially been on Will's side, been completely fascinated with Will and had the utmost faith in Will. She defended him at the beginning of the season, and now to be finally washing her hands of this business is pretty significant. And like I say often in these TV reviews, it'll be interesting to see where they go with her from here, because there's not really any going back. Will has tried to kill Hannibal Lecter, so I don't really know if things will ever be the same between him and Alana again. Although the scenes between him and Hannibal Lecter was that of simultaneous respect and hostility. Because obviously Will still blames Hannibal for landing him in this mental institution, and obviously he still harbors a very visible visible anger towards Hannibal Lecter for his crimes as the Chesapeake Ripper. And Hannibal Lecter, he is peeved that Will tried to kill him. I mean, he does say, how can I not take this personally? But then he follows that up with if I was Beverly's killer or something like that. If I was Beverly's killer, I would applaud your effort. So that kind of admiration for what he has driven Will to do is something that again Mads Mikkelsen plays very subtly but very effectively. And that's one thing I really like about Mads Mikkelsen's version of Hannibal Lecter, is that he is very subtle. He is very subtle without necessarily underplaying it too much, because he still leaves quite an impact as Hannibal Lecter, and he still gives a very good performance, but he is not quite as hammy or as over the top as someone like Anthony Hopkins was. And I know Anthony Hopkins won the Oscar for Hannibal Lecter, but he was playing a completely different Hannibal Lecter than Mads Mikkelsen currently does. And truth be told, I've said this before, I'll say it again, Mads Mikkelsen is my favorite version of Hannibal Lecter. I'm sorry, he is. But the serial killing, the episodic killing this week, because the Chesapeake Ripper feels the need to kill again, just as he's throwing a dinner party. I mean, after the attempt on his life, he feels the need to get his appetite back, so he does some more killing. And the murder scene, while creative, did leave me with a question, with one question: how did he accomplish it so fast? How did he move this big tree into the middle of a parking lot, dig up the pavement, and put the tree in there? How did he do that? And no one noticed. No one wondering where he was. No one seeing him. No one hearing him. I don't know. Maybe they'll explain that at a later date. But it just was one of those things that I was just supposed to accept, and I was having a little bit of a hard time swallowing it. Same with the murder of the guard in the mental institution, the medical ward of the asylum. I was wondering, how did no one hear that? Was no one else on duty? Was no one else guarding another part of the hospital, and maybe they heard some kind of commotion? I don't know. Maybe they just choked him out and then hung him by fish hooks. I don't know. But the actual killing in the parking lot, they have this guy basically wired into this tree. Not really wired, but he's basically weaved into this tree, and basically his organs have been completely removed and replaced with all these toxic flowers, like one type of flower for the heart, one type of flower for the liver. You get my drift. The only thing that was there was the lungs, and sure enough, according to Will's prediction, Hannibal Lecter throws a dinner party. So Jack, there's a nice little scene where Jack walks into the dinner party, and he basically says, or he doesn't say anything, he just kind of looks around, and he doesn't actually believe Will at this point, but he just kind of looks around and gets this thought into his head, as he sees all the people eating the hors d'oeuvres, including Alana, eating these hors d'oeuvres, and you can't even tell what half of them are. So that was just a nice little creepy scene. But one thing that I think they should have elaborated on a bit more is why Abel Gideon didn't tell Jack the truth when it came to Hannibal Lecter. Why? Because basically Will has spent the entirety, or not the entirety, but most of his screen time of the previous 2 episodes trying to convince Gideon to bear witness against Hannibal Lecter. So I would have liked a bit more of a concrete reason why he lied to Jack. Maybe it was implied and I missed it. If I did miss it, please let me know. Because you really have to pay attention with this show, and I do try to pay attention, but it is late at night, so I could very well have missed something. But aside from the setup of maybe Hannibal Lecter is not the upstanding guy we all thought he was, not really a whole lot sets this episode apart from the rest, although that's not a bad thing. All I mean by that is the acting is still very, very stellar from all parties involved. Like Hugh Dancy, Lawrence Fishburne, Mads Mikkelsen, Carolyn Devernas. All these guys are still very good in their roles. The imagery is still very creepy. I really like how this episode makes something as simple as playing a piano seem very, very deliciously sinister. That sounds like a creepy phrase, but this is a creepy show, and the way they kind of do these close-ups of the strings on the piano, the way they kind of revolve around Hannibal Lecter as he plays it, and occasionally when they intercut scenes of Hannibal playing with whatever's going on with Jack and the police. It's like I say with this show a lot, it's really an accomplishment when you can make something as simple as that look very look evil. Yeah, the imagery, the tree. The imagery is still very strong. It is provocative, and at times you don't really get what the imagery means until later in the episode, or maybe even later in the story arc. But the imagery here wasn't really much in the way of foreshadowing, because there was this brief moment where Will imagined himself as this the stag silhouette, and basically what the stag has represented throughout the entirety of the show is a murderer. So Will imagining himself as the stag was an interesting little scene, and also the tree was an interesting visual, especially with the flowers replacing the limbs, or not the limbs, the organs. I'm tired. Even though I did have questions about how, once I actually got past that little query, I really did like. This sounds weird. I really did like the very disgusting visual, like this show often does with these serial killings. So yeah, very strong episode as always, and unlike the previous 2 episodes, it's really starting to dawn on these characters, some more than others, that Hannibal Lecter may not be the guy to trust. But seeing Alana slowly won over and slowly abandoning Will was an intriguing. It was a nice added little subplot. So yeah, that's about all I got for this week's episode of Hannibal. And if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not mistaken, Game of Thrones starts back up this Saturday, and if I am mistaken, then I just made an idiot of myself. So until I review something next, I will talk to you later.